Since the dawn of civilization, the powerful have conspired to twist the course of history to suit their own designs. Like puppeteers, a few shadowy figures could still be pulling the strings of destiny for billions. Those who cry conspiracy are usually mocked at, for sometimes the truth is so obvious it goes unnoticed. Are those merely paranoid fantasies cooked up to feed the appetite of paperback readers and web surfers, but which bear no relation to reality? Or are we living out some perfectly executed plan? Wars, revolutions, social movements, terrorist attacks. Everything is given an official explanation. But perhaps nothing is what it seems to be. Let's dare to unveil the incredible world of secret societies.
United States of America, the most powerful nation of all time. A good friend to have, a terrible enemy to confront. But the world champions of democracy may be hiding a dirty little secret, because they may well be the first ever Masonic country. A nation built on secret alliances, yet still their very own citizens remain unaware. As does the entire world. Among those who instigated the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Latin American Wars of Independence, a startling number were either paid-up Freemasons or sympathetic to Freemasonry. But particularly in the case of the United States, the Masonic influence didn't stop once independence had been achieved. Freemasonry also later participated in the planning and development of this country's political infrastructure, and in the management of it up to modern day. Whether this is a good or bad thing depends on one's opinion about Freemasonry. So first, we should understand what Freemasonry is all about.
Freemasonry is a secret brotherhood whose origins go back to the builders' guilds of the Middle Ages. Maçon in French means bricklayer. It was born out of the need of these craftsmen to aggressively protect their skills, and by doing so, to maintain their status and livelihoods. In addition, their secrecy helped save their brethren from official persecution, since many of the Masonic ideals clashed head-on with those of the Church in Rome. By the end of the Middle Ages, Masonry had evolved into Freemasonry, or Free and Accepted Masons. Free for not admitting slaves or serfs into their ranks, and accepted for now accepting not only builders, but also anyone who swore allegiance to their rules. Freemasonry became an anti-clerical, an anti-monarchical secret society that kept many of the symbols and rituals of the original builders' guilds. Though it became a civilian social organization with avowedly humanistic objectives, on many occasions its operations were secret and unmistakably political.
For centuries, Freemasonry was officially persecuted by the church and the establishment. However, many nobles and clergymen did in fact belong to this secret society. Its ability to attract even those who were supposed to be against it made Freemasonry all that more intriguing and disturbing.
The origins of Freemasonry in the United States go back to 1682, when Scotsman John Skene, an active member of the Scottish Aberdeen Lodge, took residence in the American colony of New England. 3 years later, he was made Deputy Governor of West Jersey. Jonathan Belcher, who was Royal Governor of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, became a Freemason in London in 1704, and boasted of being the first Freemason to be born in the United States.
By 1776, what we now call the United States were barely 13 small colonies crowded upon the East Coast. They had been founded by English Protestant Puritans, the famous Pilgrims. who had been expelled from England by the powerful Anglican Church. The rest of the country was a rich and vast terrain inhabited exclusively by native tribes, an unexplored land that was more often than not conquered at gunpoint.
This was an era where men worked, fought and dreamed while God watched them from the pulpit, or so they believed. In that rugged landscape, within a social structure dominated by the Puritans, the first Freemasons began to disseminate the revolutionary ideas that they had brought from Europe. Ideas of religious freedom, independence, science, rationalism, and humanism.
The emerging American Freemasons were strongly influenced by the Rosicrucians, another secret society that was created in Germany in the early 15th century for the study of the hidden arts. The American Freemasons adopted many of the Rosicrucians' mystical ways, as well as their Greek and Egyptian symbols. Symbols that can be seen in many American national emblems today.
The Rosicrucians claim to have founded their first American lodge in 1694 in Philadelphia, when William Penn, the Quaker who founded the first American community to advocate total religious liberty, Pennsylvania, invited Johann Jacob Zimmermann's Chapter of Perfection to leave Germany and join them. Zimmermann, a Rosicrucian, believed that Christ would return in the year 1700. So in 1694, they built an observatory on American soil to watch for the return of the Lord.
To Zimmermann's regret, Jesus did not show up, and the Rosicrucians subsequently dispersed around Pennsylvania. Some of them became wandering spiritual healers who used amulets and staged ceremonies to ensure good crops and to drive away bad luck.
In 1717, the Great Lodge of England was founded. It claimed authority over all other lodges in the English colonies. But the American lodges rejected the right of the Great Lodge to exert control over them, and they did not recognize its authority. The Great Lodge of England countered this by encouraging the creation of several other faithful lodges in the colonies.
It's important to point out that the uprising of the American Masonic lodges against the English ones predates the American Revolution by many years. Therefore, whether this was planned or not, they became the very first bearers of revolutionary thought. As they grew in number, the vision of independence spread across the whole country. In 1776, the United States declared their independence, and soon after, their Constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved.
In 1732, Benjamin Franklin was initiated into the Turn Tavern Lodge in Philadelphia. That same year, James Oglethorpe, founder of the Savannah Colony, which would later become the state of Georgia, created the Solomon Lodge. It was here that the two men destined to become the first Jewish-American Freemasons, Moses and Daniel Nunes, were initiated.
Regardless of their origin, these English and native lodges spread like wildfire throughout the country, fueled by the prestige that came with being a member of them. In 1740, most respectable men in the New England colonies either were or wanted to become Freemasons.
In 1773, a group of outraged Mohawks staged a protest against what they considered unfair English custom duties by dumping overboard the tea cargo of 3 ships. It was the famous Boston Tea Party. Today it is suspected that many of those supposed Mohawks were in fact disguised Freemasons who belonged to the St. Andrew's Lodge of Boston, a lodge that curiously did not convene that night.
The church was particularly infuriated by the fact that many Freemasons supported deism, a Christian philosophy that believes in a personal God and upholds a purely rational interpretation of Scripture, discrediting revelation.
According to deistic principles, the Bible holds many truths and wisdom, but it is not inspired by God. Deists also deny that Jesus is the Son of God and claim that faith is no substitute for observable facts. They do not believe in prophets or miracles. God can only be known through experience and knowledge. For the Church of England, as well as for the Puritans, deism was clearly a heresy that had to be wiped out.
The persecution of heretic Freemasons was relentless, but nothing could stop them. Soon the British colonies in America would take their first great steps towards liberty, and in their footsteps, the trace of Freemasonry could be clearly seen.
Freemason and revolutionary ideas blended well. Masonic principles chimed with the American culture of the era, steeped as it was in notions of fraternity, liberty, and equality. Pennsylvania was a particularly fertile breeding ground for Freemasonry, since its inhabitants considered it to be the promised land of those who had suffered persecution in Europe. Here, Freemason symbols even appeared on crockery and home furniture.
Although Freemasons were in favour of equality, slavery was still in existence in the United States, and they did not accept black people. So those freed slaves began to found their own lodges. Such was the case of the Prince Hall Lodge.
In 1775, while still under British rule, the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge was created in Boston as a segregated chapter for free blacks, named after an emancipated slave, Prince Hall. During the War of Independence, many of these black Freemasons, including Prince Hall, joined the revolutionary forces and fought with the Continental Army against the British. Today, the Prince Hall fraternity has over 4,500 lodges worldwide, with a membership of over 300,000 Freemasons.
In 1776, the United States of America declared their independence, and soon after, their constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved. But it didn't end there. Freemasonry's involvement went a lot deeper, and it was at the foundation of the whole governmental system. So one wonders what previous oaths had the Freemason founding fathers taken before placing their right hand on the new constitution, and how much of what has been built since was done to protect the interest of the Freemasons.
16% of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. A quarter of the signatories of the Articles of Confederation were Freemasons, and a third of the signatories of the Constitution were Freemasons. By the time George Washington took the oath of office as first president of the USA, a third of the governors of the original colonies were Freemasons too. Freemason John A.C. Muhlenberg was the first Speaker of the House of Representatives. Freemasons John J. Blair and William Cushing were justices in the first Supreme Court. Close to 46% of the officers of the Continental Army, or Independence Army, were Freemasons, as were almost half of their 78 generals.
Now, if we heed to the Freemasonry's ideals of liberty and fraternity and focus on its positive contributions, maybe it wouldn't matter if the United States is a Masonic country. However, we are speaking of a secret society that for centuries has practiced strange rituals and taken mysterious oaths, and whose practices have all taken place behind closed doors. So what if the most important democracy in the world really responded to the interests of small groups of people whose actual goals are kept secret from its own citizens? How much of the phrase "all men are equal under the law" remains true when we discover that the architects of this great democracy belong to societies whose members protect each other and won't even let their own women join?